Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cryptids and Critters Paranormal. I'm your host, the Deuster. It is December the 11th of 2023. Christmas Day is only 14 days away. And every year, as a kind of a tradition, I usually try to put together some of my Christmas memories from the past. And I usually try to read them at my daughter's when we go there for Christmas. I'm going to call this one of Christmas Past. It's kind of long. It's very emotional for me. So y'all, I may have a little trouble getting through all this. So if I do, just kind of bear with me, and I'll get through it the best I can. I call this of Christmas Past. I don't remember my very first Christmas, or the second one for that matter. I just can't remember back that far. I guess it's about my third Christmas that awakens a flurry of childish memories of a cap pistol and a little brown stuffed horse with black mane. At the time, we lived in a small house on Kirby Street in Springfield. It's located where Piggy Pet Barbecue now stands. The pistol and rolls of caps that I got were gifts from Mom and Daddy, and I can still smell the aroma of the cap gun as the smoke and sparks arose from the hammer. Nothing else quickens my memories of those early Christmas any quicker than the pop of a cap and the accompanying blue curl of smoke, followed by the yell, "Get that stinking thing out of here!" The stuffed horse was a present from my grandmother. Rooster, I called her. Everyone else called her Granny Matt, but I chose to call her Rooster, whereby she would attempt to catch me. She probably would have too, except for the fact that she was crippled, having broken her foot while she was a young child. Her foot was never the same after that. The stuffed horse was to be the last gift that I would receive from Granny, for she died before the next Christmas rolled around. I remember one day a kid from a neighborhood came over to play, and he took my horse and broke its leg. Broke his leg plumb off, really. It was just sticks covered with brown cloth and stuffed with sawdust. I don't even remember the boy's name, if I ever did know it, but I still hate him to this day for breaking my little horse. The next few Christmases were spent in Uncle John's farm in Owens Chapel. We moved there soon after Granny died. As Daddy worked at night, we usually got our visit from Santa in the daytime, usually after a hurried trip to town. I don't remember very many of the toys I received except for a bow and arrow, cowboy hats, and such. Uncle John and Daddy always bought a bunch of grapes, apples, oranges, and bananas for us, and we would eat on them until we could hold no more. I loved toy tractors back in the day, and one year I got a shiny new one, just like Uncle John's. Oh, I hadn't gotten tractors before, but this one was extra special. These previous ones had been plastic, but this one was metal and just looked just like Uncle John's Red Belly Ford, all shiny red and white, with big rubber tires and front wheels that turned with the steering wheel. I loved that tractor. I probably plowed more ground in the living room by the hearth than most grown men ever did in their entire life. That is, until Aunt Toonie come to visit. I used to hate it when Joyce, my older sister, and had her friends over, because they always wanted Terry and me to play dolls with them, play with their stupid dolls. Yuck, I hated dolls. Anyway, my brother Terry and I were busy plowing our make-believe fields outside Daddy's shop one day, when up walked Toonie and Joyce, wanting to play dolls. Toonie got mad because I wouldn't play with her dumb dolls, so she grabbed my tractor and flung it high into the air. When it hit the ground, it broke off a rear wheel and axle, and boy, was I mad. I ran to the house screaming, where Daddy attempted to fix it, but he said it was some kind of pot metal and there was no way to weld it. So, as far as that goes, my little tractor was beyond repair. How I wish we had super glue back then. There wasn't many things Daddy couldn't fix back in the day. One Christmas, Joyce and I had a speaking part in a Christmas program at Pleasant Grove Church. My big part was to recite "There Are Presents in the Closet." We practiced and practiced and finally memorized our lines. The big night finally arrived, and we were heartbroken to discover that Daddy had to work and could not go with us that night. So off to work he went, while Mama bundled us up and piled us into the old green Studebaker. Halfway up the lane, we encountered a large man walking in the cold, all dressed in red velvet and trimmed in white fur. Easing the car up beside him, Mama rolled down the window and asked him where he was going. He proceeded to tell her that his reindeer were tired and had to rest up for their big night, and he had to get to Pleasant Grove Church for a big program. Mama told him that that's where we were going and would be glad to give him a lift. So in he climbed. I was terrified. Never in my life had I been so close to Santa Claus. I had heard so much about him, but I never actually seen him. That is, until now. After he got situated in the front seat and told Mama how nice she was to give him a ride, he turned his head toward the back seat and smiled at Terry and me. His eyes were smiling and his face was full of love, and we discovered we had nothing to fear. Soon we arrived at church, and guess who got to escort Santa through the door? I was so proud. Just think, Santa rode to church with us. He watched intently as we gave our program, and he grinned wide as I recited my part. I can still see that smiling face as he handed out presents from under the large cedar tree in the corner. Soon Santa had to leave, but a few minutes later, Daddy came in. He had gotten off work early, but not in time to see the program. We told him all about Santa and the program, but he seemed to already know about it somehow. My most miserable Christmas occurred at Uncle John's in 1959. Uncle John had died in a tractor accident on the farm a month before, and no one was really in the Christmas mood. Uncle John always had a way to liven up the house, and without him, it just didn't seem right. I remember the small house seemed colder than usual that morning as we passed out what few gifts we had. I don't even remember if we had a Christmas tree or not. I may have received other gifts, but the only one I can remember that year was the one from Uncle John. It was kind of like an advent calendar, but it was made in the form of a book. Each page had something different to do on it on that particular day. Like one page had a little tin whistle, another would have a chocolate candy, another maybe a candy cane, maybe a game to play on one page, and so on. I found out later that Uncle John had ordered those from Miss Mamie Crossland just a short while before he died. I kept the book for a long time, but lost it when we moved from the farm. My next memorable Christmas came the following year. I had forever dreamed of owning a BB gun, a Daisy BB gun, and that Christmas it came true. Terry and I both got one from under the tree that year, but it was not home. Santa had delivered them to Uncle Gene for safekeeping, and he brought them to Granddaddy's that year at Christmas Eve when we celebrated our Christmas there. We also got a pair of new cowboy boots that year. They were made at the Acme Boot Plant in Springfield, where my Uncle Gene worked at the time. Granny and Granddaddy Brooks lived on the Sack McIntosh farm back then, and this place was a virtual paradise for a growing boy. There was a small creek that ran through it with a couple of bridges, hillsides, and a lot of small animals to hunt. Birds, chipmunks, squirrels, that sort of thing. We hardly slept at all that night in anticipation of shooting something with the new BB guns the next morning. The next couple of years seemed like a blur, with nothing exceptional remembered. We moved a couple 3 times, once to Guthrie, Kentucky, then to Cedar Hill. Oh, I'm sure we had something special each year, but at the present, I just can't recall what it may have been. The next Christmas I remember occurred about 1963. We lived in the hollow off Kenny's Road on Mr. Bill Peck's farm. This place was neat, with a creek, a railroad tunnel, woods, barns, all kind of good things for a couple of kids to get into. A couple of days before Christmas that year, Terry and I were bored, with nothing to do. We decided to see if Mama would let us have our presents early. So we got together and went to her. We whined and pestered her for hours. We even used the excuse, what if we die before Christmas? Knowing that any loving mother could give in to such a plea. Looking back, I realized how cruel and heartless this was. And I want to take this time to apologize for making such a statement. Anyway, it worked, and Mama opened the closet and gave us our presents. One present was a battery-operated police car with flashing lights and a siren. We also got a set of cap guns and holsters. I don't remember what else we got that year, but a bundle of switches or a lump of coal is what we should have gotten. I still see the hurt look in Daddy's eyes when Mama told him that she had given us our presents while he was at work. He had looked forward to seeing our faces as we opened our presents, and now we had ruined it for him. I never tried to use this ruse again, always waiting until Christmas. And it was long about this time that Daddy was preaching at the little church in downtown Cedar Hill. It wasn't actually a church, but an old concrete block store building. Excuse me. It sat beside the railroad tracks, and I recall on several occasions that David had to stop preaching when a train came by because no one could hear what he was saying. We had to get there early in the winter time so Daddy could build a fire in the stove in an attempt to get the building warm before the service. We sat in a warm car while Daddy went inside the coal building with a bucket of coal. I remember scraping frost from the inside of the church windows with my fingernails and scratching works of art in the frost. I can still envision Daddy standing behind the pulpit and telling the congregation of the baby Jesus, Joseph, Mary, and the wise men. After that, sacks of fruit and candy were passed out to the congregation, followed by the opening of gifts. The tree was just a simple cedar tree that Mr. Matt Byard had cut and put in a 5-gallon bucket of gravel. It had very few lights, and us kids made the red and green paper chain decorations for it in Sunday school. Now, across the street from this church stood Gossett's General Store. It was a large red brick building with big display windows. Each year they had a Christmas display in these windows, and on many times we ran over to see what was on display. One particular display stands out vividly in my mind. They had a shiny tinsel Christmas tree in the window, and the tree changed colors from green to blue to red to yellow as a colored wheel revolved in front of a spotlight. I remember standing on the sidewalk and pressing my nose against the cold window pane and staring under the tree at the toys. An electric train chugged along its tracks, blowing whisk of blue smoke from a smokestack as it made its way past the other toys. A toy guitar, BB guns, toy pistol sets, dolls, army jeeps and tanks, along with stuffed animals, were sitting there, just waiting to be purchased. As I stood there mesmerized by the sheer beauty of the display, I daydreamed of owning such toys. But deep down, I knew it was not to be. There was not enough money for such expensive gifts. Mama and Daddy both worked hard for what little money they received, and it had to be spread out to make it last until the next payday. I know that Daddy did without lunch on many occasions in order to give us what he could. I can honestly say that one of the best gifts I ever received was being allowed to be born the son of Bill Edwards. Sometime about 1965, Daddy had a couple of heart attacks and was not able to work his public job anymore. This put most of the breadwinning on Mama's shoulders. Daddy received a disability check each month, but this barely paid the rent and the light bill. It was up to Mama to put the food on the table. Daddy tried to save all he could to buy Christmas gifts, but the bills took most of his money. The doctors told us that Daddy would not be around too many more years, so I tried my best to spend each Christmas like it'd be his last. He was more than pleased with each gift he received from us and put each one to good use. He would sit for hours and admire his gifts, thanking you over and over for the gift. We always attended church, so I can recall several Christmas programs, but the one I remember the most occurred in Uncle J.D. Brooks's church. One Christmas. The church was located in an old concrete block building just past the old Moonlight Drive-In between Springfield and Greenbrier. And sometimes we could sit by the window and watch the movie, without sound, of course, but that's another story for another time. Anyway, Uncle J.D. was preaching his Christmas sermon, telling of the innkeeper putting Joseph and Mary in a stable, the birth of Christ, and a visit of the three wise men. When describing the gifts they brought, he said gold, myrrh, and Frankenstein. I don't believe anyone else caught this blooper, but Terry and I sure got a good laugh out of it. The Christmas of 1982 was especially hard on Daddy, as well as the rest of us. For that year, the family circle was broken for the first time. A child's chair was empty. The youngest child, Timmy, had died in a fireworks explosion the previous July, and our hearts just weren't into Christmas that year. I can understand his love for his youngest child. I have one myself. It's not that you love the youngest more than the others. It's just a different kind of love. Each of my children share a special place in my heart with equal love for each one. You know, I don't remember exchanging gifts there that year, though I know without a doubt that we did. I do know there was a lot of tears under the tree that year. A few years later, Christmas came at a bad time. Times were hard and there was very little money to buy presents. That year, Daddy made his gifts for us, personalizing each one. Mine was a simple wooden shelf with my name on it in his own handwriting, and to go along with it, he had taken baby food jars and some plywood and built a nail and screw storage rack. Tears of emotion flooded over, and I remember Terry crying and hugging Daddy for his gift. I cried a few tears and did some hugging myself. I hope Daddy didn't take the tears as us being disappointed with his gifts, because they weren't. They were tears of love. I still get emotional when I think about him working in the cold building, sawing, nailing, and painting on our gifts that year, putting his love in each one of them. I knew he would have no money for Christmas that year, and in desperation, he crafted each gift with his own loving hands. Hands that were cracked and stiff from years of hard work. Daddy, if you're listening, I still have mine, and I will keep them and cherish them forever. If I could go back in time and spend one more Christmas over again, it would have to be 1990. We all congregated on the 23rd at Mama and Daddy's, ate a good meal, and exchanged our gifts as usual. While all this was going on, it started snowing and sleeting. Soon the roads were covered with ice and were very hazardous. We decided to cut Christmas short that year and head home while we could. As I look back, I wish we had stayed longer, for this was to be the last Christmas we would get to spend with Daddy. He got sick after New Year's, and a few days later, he went to his heavenly home to live with Granny Matt, Uncle John, and Timmy. To me, Christmas would never be the same without my Daddy. I believe the roughest Christmas for me was 1991. It was the first one without Daddy. It just didn't feel right without his smiling eyes and laughter. His chair stood empty at the table, but his presence was strong and real, and I know he was with us that year. And once again, there were many tears shed around the tree. And then in June of 2020, my mother passed away, and Christmas just hasn't been the same with both my parents gone. Perhaps Dolly Parton summed it up best in her song. No amount of money could buy from me the memories that I have of then, and no amount of money could pay me to go back and live through it again. That pretty much sums it up. Thank you for listening. I didn't get through it better than I thought I would. Again, this is Dooster with Cryptids and Critters Paranormal. I want you to like my page, subscribe to it, and I'm going to be posting a few things every week on here. Some will do with history, some will be maybe some more Christmas memories, paranormal stuff, ghost, Bigfoot. You never know what I might be talking about that particular day. So if you don't mind, stop by and check us out again. Once again, this is Dooster with Cryptids and Critters Paranormal, and we will catch you later.